Hello, everybody, and welcome to, I suppose, a Monday edition. I don't know. It's Monday. Welcome to the podcast today, the Bearded Bible Thinker podcast. I'm your host, Rob Grunden, the thinker with the beard. And thinker, again, is a little bit nice. I guess me being nice to myself. I don't know how much thought goes into this. I know not a ton of planning does. So I just ran across 3 news stories. I just picked them out of nothingness, and we're just gonna work through a couple of these things. And I just picked these out. I haven't read them. I picked these news stories out of a lineup about 5 minutes ago. And the first headline is part of CBSNews.com article that is entitled, the headline is Twitter removes tweet shared by Trump with false coronavirus statistics. The reason that I think this was worthy to be brought on here, it's okay. First of all, it's the most negative one of the 3 that I picked. This is one that is a struggle for me because what we see these companies doing, Twitter is the most notorious for it, but it happens in Google searches and Facebook as well, and others. But Twitter's the one that makes all the news, right? When these kind of things happen. But Twitter removes this tweet shared by President Trump with false coronavirus statistics. So it'll be interesting to hear what false coronavirus statistics are by their definition. Says this: Twitter on Sunday removed a tweet shared by President Trump that contained false information about coronavirus statistics from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, with the company saying it violated its rules. So this is Twitter saying that this tweet violated its rules. The tweet was originally posted by Twitter user Mel Q, a supporter of the unfounded QAnon conspiracy theory, and retweeted by Mr. Trump on Sunday. The post claimed the CDC quietly updated the COVID number to show a small fraction of all deaths, 6%, from the coronavirus were actually a result of COVID-19, the disease caused by the novel coronavirus. Says the vast majority of deaths, the post claimed, were because of other serious illnesses. Okay, so I get what they're doing here. So the idea behind this is an idea that many of us have heard. No matter what side of it you're on, you've heard about this probably, where there are people who have these underlying health conditions who, like, for instance, emphysema. Someone has emphysema, they get COVID-19, there are complications because of that, and they die. There's this argument between did they die because of COVID-19 or did they die because of emphysema? And I guess my personal opinion is that it was really emphysema, because if I get COVID-19, there is a very small chance that I'm going to die. It's going to pretty much be the flu. At least statistically, that's what the stats actually show. So there are so many things. I think that when it comes to the coronavirus, there's so many things that make the public struggle to trust any of the information that they're getting. One of those things is, even here in our own state, there have been so many instances where someone is, a test comes back positive, and then it's negative 5 minutes later when there's another test run, or negative. There's one instance where there was a positive test, so that person and everybody and their mama who had contact with that person were quarantined, and then the guy had 2 following tests after that. Both of them were negative, so he was able to actually go back to work while the people that were around him were still quarantined. So there's so many of these instances. This is not an isolated thing. It's not just a story out of a billion opposite stories. This happens regularly, where someone will test positive and then negative the next day or whenever they go back to get tested. So there is a question that is on people's mind that says, is this something that is real in the first place? These testing statistics, anyway. Can we trust these anyway, or is this just some test that happens that has how accurate is all of this anyway? I guess that's the question that comes to people's mind when you're faced with this. How accurate is this stuff anyway? Like how if I get tested and it's positive, it's going to cause this ruckus, right, where people have to quarantine, and it turns into this big deal. And absolutely, if I actually am sick, I actually have this thing, and I test positive, I should take precautions in the same way that I should take precautions. Like I shouldn't go to church with the flu, knowingly having the flu. That doesn't make sense. You don't want to get everyone else sick. That's just natural intelligence, right? It's just common sense, which is a lacking thing nowadays. But if I'm sick, man, don't go to church. Don't send somebody to the store to get your medicine. Do what you have to do and nothing more, right? If you have, I'm just going to use the flu over and over, I guess. If you have the flu, right, you're not going to go places publicly. One, because you feel like garbage, but two, because there's this, like we actually do like one another enough to we don't long to get everybody else sick. So you stay home, right? So that being the case, if these are just tests, I don't feel bad. I test positive, and then a day later I test negative, and then a day after that I test negative. It has caused this big ruckus. It's caused other people to be nervous, to have anxiety about it around me. It's caused other people to quarantine and really watch their kids and be scared. And it's caused many of the people who go to work here in Dickinson. There's a lot of situations where they'll test positive, or they're around someone who tests positive, and so their work, their job, their employer sends them home for a few days and waiting for their test, right? And during those few days, because of the situation, they're still paying them, right? They're still kind of doing the right thing, right? And paying for those are paid days off because it's not their fault, kind of a thing. This is causing a problem, though, right? The people who are dealing with this, they are. You have jobs paying for people who, some of them don't need to be home or quarantined. So there's money lost. There's financial ramifications there. You have, I know a few people who've had to deal with this, and it's just infuriating because they don't feel bad. It comes back negative, and they've had to sit at home because it's at the same time, if you're home from work waiting on a test for COVID-19, if you're the type of person who's just going to go to the park and go hang out and go do whatever you want anyway, then you're also probably the type of person that's infuriated that you're being sent home in the first place because you're not buying into all of this stuff. But if you're the person who is buying into it, and you see things that are actually frightening you or whatever, then you're stuck at home worried that oh no, is this going to be okay, right? There's just so much confusion, and the tests being positive that actually are not, the false positives that people really aren't talking about much. You hear one side of the aisle giving statistics, you hear another side of the aisle giving statistics that both clash with one another, and then that nobody is really, at least not super publicly, nobody's talking about this situation, that it is a situation, the false positives. How much of this can we actually trust? That's what there are more than one or two people that are asking that question. How much of this can we actually trust? And so that's a problem. That's a problem. Can we trust it in the first place? Secondly, you have this struggle going on right now where there have been instances where it has been documented that there's fraud in this COVID-19 stuff because in the same way that the school system gets an extra however many dollars per student that they have, the hospitals during this COVID-19 thing are getting specific amounts of money if someone tests positive, if they have someone who is in the hospital and is positive for COVID-19. And so that naturally, it's a human condition. That's going to cause fraud to happen. That's going to cause fabrication to happen. It's going to cause people to do things that are not okay, to take advantage of the system, to steal money from taxpayers, which is what it boils down to at the end of the day, to commit fraud and steal money from taxpayers because they want they want that extra cash flow. They want that extra revenue. Not that happens all over the place or that every hospital is doing this. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but it has happened. And one of the things that you will not see much about in the news, maybe in some of your local news areas, I don't know, but one of the things that you won't hear is what's being done about that. When that is blatantly caught, a testing site that is just throwing out positives, or a hospital that's throwing out positives. There was one story here, I think I mentioned it on this podcast at one other time, but there was one story here that there was someone who, I won't get into the details because I don't want to get them wrong, but someone had a situation that was going to kill them. They were going to die. And they were given a COVID-19 test, negative. Another one, negative. Another one, negative. Then there was another one, positive. End of story, no more testing. They died of COVID-19, right? What a bunch of garbage. And I'm sure that that's a statistic that's being counted. So that to me that's some frustration that people are feeling right now. This lack of truthfulness, and when dishonesty is found out, there isn't anything really being said about it other than shame on them, or it's a story that is told. And that is a frustrating thing for a lot of people, I think. And the whole system would gain a lot more confidence from people if they, if there were some specific, sort of measures being taken, by authorities to put the kibosh on, this kind of stuff happening, on the fraud part of it. And two, if we got statistics on, if they were brutally honest and gave us statistics on these things that seem very obviously to be false positives, how often, even something so small as saying, based on the testing rate of such and such, with how trustworthy these tests are, is equal to this, but this is what these tests show. Like just acknowledge that the testing isn't perfect. Just acknowledge that some of these things are false positives. Just acknowledge that that's a possibility. Let's talk about it. Not just sweep it under a rug to get your statistics out. And that sometimes that's really frustrating for people. This is a frustration for people because think about it. If you're on one side of this, it's frustrating because here's another instance where you don't trust the government, you don't trust the powers that be, you don't trust the hospitals, you don't trust the medical system. And then the other side of that is here's another situation where you do trust all of it, but because of the lack of communication and the lack of admission that there are some things that are going on that are not good, because of that lack of kind of communication, now you are left trying to defend something without a ton to stand on because they need to talk about it. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Probably not worth a lot, but there they are. I wish that there was a lot more clear talk, a lot more clear. Let's see, a lot more. I think there's a lot more room to get better at communicating truth. But that's the struggle. Because here in America today, what is truth? Each side has their own set of facts that they subscribe to, that they push. Both of them are generally skewed in some way or another to fit what they want everyone to hear. And there is also this, this is long to get into, so I'm not going to, but there's also this whole philosophy, this whole secularized idea that there is no such thing as truth now, and boys are whatever they want to be, and girls are whatever they want to be, and you can have relations with whoever you want and love whoever you want, however you want, which it's just there's no such thing as truth, which is another whole problem, right? So we'll buy into whatever we want to be fact, rather than getting to the bottom of logical, true, honest fact. It just doesn't exist anymore because we don't want it to. But thankfully, God's word is true. It is fact. And the more that objective science, I say objective science because very little of it is objective nowadays. It starts with a lot of presuppositions and things that are already believed and brought to the table. But as science, objective science is still every day finding more and more out that confirms the scriptures to be true. And so there is an objective truth. There is a truth. There is the scriptures coming from God himself that are breathed out by God, penned by God's servants so long ago. And every one of those things have been true. Every one of those prophecies are fulfilled prophecies apart from the end of days. There is truth. There's a truth in a world that is filled with fake truth and false truth and facts that aren't facts and all of that. We can rest in the fact that the Word of God is true, and that is a huge takeaway in my mind for this whole thing. And speaking of the coronavirus, there is also a news story on CNBC.com that I was encouraged by. Canada to purchase 76 million doses of Novavax. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it, Novavax, coronavirus vaccine. Company says. So, American vaccine developer Novavax announced Monday that it's reached an agreement in principle with Canada to supply 76 million doses of its experimental coronavirus vaccine to the country. The company said it expects to finalize an agreement to supply Canada with doses as early as the second quarter of 2021. Wow, that's a long way, bro. I know business time is not the same as real time, but good grief. I guess it takes a while to manufacture that as well. And they're probably going to have to supply the U.S. with that first. Anyway. So, but the fact that these vaccines are coming, it's good. Hopefully, will ease a lot of folks as that stuff comes out more and more. That there's a way that perhaps we can just get a little shot, take a little medicine, and be okay from this thing. So that's a good thing. It's encouraging to see that there are a lot of things in the pipeline. These vaccines are good and promising. You hear that from some folks, and it's an exciting thing. There's that whole thing where I think a couple of weeks ago, and again, I might have talked about this on here as well. I rant a lot, so that's just the way it is. Sorry about that. But there was a couple of weeks ago where President Trump and they did a little press conference where he talked about the idea where you give plasma if you've had coronavirus and you're over it, you're fixed now, you're over it and you've beat it, then they take your plasma and somehow, in a very doctorly sort of way, give it to other people, administer that as therapy, and it actually helps. So there are lots of things that are coming down the pipeline that are really positive with this thing. I don't think that even the person with the faintest idea of reality at this point, I don't see how this is going to be a lasting, oh my goodness, stay in your basement thing, especially after this stuff comes out. I know that different strains of things happen, and I mean that's a thing, and we have to think about that for sure. But it's a thing with the flu every year. You take a flu shot, that's well and good, but if it's a different strain, you're going to get the flu, right? So, but we've lived through things like this before, and not because we're amazing or we're awesome or we're super strong, but because God is good and God is just and God is going to do God things, and he's going to show grace and mercy until he doesn't anymore. And then there will be judgment, and that's going to be way more serious than the coronavirus. Lastly, Hurricane Laura. This thing was powerful. Powerful enough that in this headline from the New York Post says this: Hurricane Laura completely reversed Texas River for about 12 hours. Now, I haven't read this either, but I'm going to read a little bit of it now so we get a grasp of what's going on. Okay, this was a Fox News correspondent that wrote this, Travis, some last name, doesn't matter. As Hurricane Laura made landfall last week near the Texas and Louisiana border, packing 150 mile per hour winds, that is pretty quick. The storm's whipping gusts caused one river in the Lone Star State to flow backward for several hours. Laura roared ashore as a Category 4 storm, which Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards said was the most powerful hurricane to strike the state. The United States Geological Survey said Friday that the storm's whipping winds pushed so much water ahead of it that the Neches River, I hope that's right. Either way, if you're from Texas, sorry about that. That the Neches River in Texas reversed course. That is insane. As Laura's outer bands brought heavy rain to the coast, the Neches River reached a flow rate of approximately 15,000 cubic feet per second at a USGS streamage in Beaumont, right as the storm made landfall. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the cubic feet per second of a river. I don't, so that's completely pointless to me. But that sounds like a lot. Like that is insane that this storm was so powerful that it literally made a river flow backwards. And the reason that I wanted to bring this up and talk about it, just very briefly, is because there's a real necessity for us to understand that there is someone infinitely more powerful than us. That there is someone infinitely more powerful than us who is in charge of this thing, right? It shouldn't be a thing that is possible. I mean, yes, we can explain it with science. The wind did it, the wind and just the way that it happened, where it made landfall, the wind speed that was happening at the time, the amount of water that was coming with it. We can scientifically look at it and do the statistics and see and, deduce what happened there. But the fact that there's something so powerful out there, like, I don't think that you can legit look at creation unless you're just that deceived. You can't look at creation and all of the stuff that happens and all of the things that just somehow perfectly work together and not understand that there is a God, that there's a creator. And in fact, in Romans chapter 1, Paul the apostle talks specifically about this, how God made us to be able to look at creation even and intuitively know there's a creator, right? The old adage that, the old example that is given with that's compared to a watch, right? If you saw this beautiful intricate watch or this beautiful intricate clock, and you looked at it, watch it happen. That's no pun intended. You watch this thing work. It's just this beautiful gold. Everything's polished and amazing, and it just clicks like dad joke, clockwork. You watch this happen. What are the chances that that clock just all of a sudden works, that it happened naturally, that somehow over the course of millions of years, these things somehow had to fall together perfectly and work? That it's insane. Any scientist that's being objective is going to think about those odds. A statistician that is being objective is going to look at those odds and think about them and do some math that I don't want to try to do. And they're going to come up with, that's crazy. It's not going to happen. Right? Like it would be more likely that I would be struck by lightning all four times on days that I just happened to win the lottery over and over again. Like, this doesn't even make sense to assume that a watch could somehow fall together. Now, you look at the human body, you look at nature, you look at all the things around us, and it is infinitely less probable that all of that stuff just so happened to fall into place perfectly. That is insane. It is so much more insane to believe that that is the case than to believe that somehow there's a watchmaker, right? Than to believe that somehow there might just be a creator out there. Even though it's something we don't understand, we can't necessarily reach out, touch, feel, smell this creator, right? It still is a little bit insane. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical to not believe there's a creator. It's just not. And I think when I see things like this in the news, it just reminds me that even though there's so much insanity around us all the time, even though there's so much going on a regular basis that is depressing, that is difficult to swallow, that is horrendous, that we've got abortion, rioting, people hating other people, people who finally, because we're hiding behind a computer screen, we say whatever we want and we cause fights and warring and whatever else. This world that we live in is in rough shape. But it is actually comforting. It's actually comforting to understand and know that there is a God and that he is that powerful, that he can make rivers flow backwards, that he's that powerful, he can make storms that make rivers flow backwards. And it is that same God who showed up in the flesh and told another powerful storm, knock it off, and the storm and the wind and the seas obeyed him. Right? I mean, that is real. There's a real God, and he's really that powerful, and he's bigger and mightier and more amazing and more terrifying than anything else that goes on in the world around us today. And I, for one, think that is amazing. And I'm comforted by it because I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I'm a disciple and a follower of Jesus Christ. If you are not, then you should be terrified. Because there's no belief, there's no way, there's no chance that you make it out of this thing and get pardoned. There's no chance unless you put your faith in Jesus Christ and submit to him as your king. That's it. That's the only way. And if I may say so myself, it's actually a pretty sweet life. Anyway, God is more powerful than the most insane thing going on in our world today, than the most insane thing going on in your life today. So put your trust in him. And until next time, think about it.